So you're a motivational speaker, an entrepreneur, award-winning comedian, best-selling author, and also I saw on your website, world hide and seek champion. I'm going to need to get an explanation for that in a bit. But you started out as a primary school teacher. Why?
Do you know?
Why did you choose that?
So all the way through school, so there was 2 or 3 things in my head that I was always going to do. One of them was I was going to end up some kind of teacher, purely because mum was a teacher. My mum was a PE teacher. And I used to help out. She actually worked in a school with children with very severe additional needs. And I used to go in and help out with like swimming galas, basketball competitions. And I absolutely adored it. I just loved being able to go in, get involved, have fun, but just help in some way. So I knew I was always going to end up in the classroom. But I also had this incredible obsession, and I really do mean obsession, with stand-up comedy. And I always remember thinking, these are the 2 things I'm going to do. I'm going to be able to do both of these things. What I didn't know is that in years to come, I would discover that they're kind of the same thing, if I'm being honest. But to go back to your original question, it's, for me, I've just been one of these people who just always wanted to make a difference. I think primary school teaching appealed to me more than secondary, because instead of just focusing on one subject, there are, I think it's 17 or 18 individual subjects and some. And the thought of being able to do PE, drama, maths, English, everything just was really appealing. And I'm glad I did it, because I reckon I learned more working with kids under the age of 10 than I ever did with any adult, and I think I've been more inspired by kids under the age of 10 than I ever have by any adult. So yeah, for me, it's one of the best jobs in the world.
What would you say is the main difference between children and adults?
Do you know, I think adults and children are all awesome in the main part. I think one of the challenges that I have, and I talk about this a lot in my work, and I write about it a lot in my books. There is this huge shift in mindset, of course, as we grow up. We learn what it's like to fail. We learn what it's like to be judged. We learn what it's like to be bullied. We learn what it's like to not be liked, and know what that feels like. And so, of course, changes as we go. I talk about I think there's this kind of moment. If you think about kids, right, there's 3 things kids are amazing at. One, there's lots of things they're amazing at, but if we think about this in terms of mindset, kids always want things to be more fun and more exciting. Like, they walk into a room and, when you're 5 and your eyes are scanning for the fun, for the excitement, for the color, for the play, or whatever it is you're looking for. 2, they believe things are possible, everything. And 3, they know things are worth the effort, which is why they'll build Lego for 6 hours and then trash it and start again, which is why they'll go out and build a den, even though they've been told, but it's going to rain in an hour. And that particular moment there, that last example I gave there, is something I mention a lot. And it's this idea that I reckon there's far too many grown-ups in this world. In fact, we'll keep that bit separate. There's too many grown-ups, and that's spelled G-R-O-A-N. That's a separate thing. But if we go back to traditional grown-ups, spelled G-R-O-W-N, there's far too many grown-ups in this world who have made that shift in their head and in their heart, from being the type of person who wanted to go outside and build a den, but they've shifted to become the type of person that thinks and says, but it's going to rain in an hour. And for me, that kind of sums up the big difference, not between every adult and child, but between most. Because if you look at those 3 things again through the eyes of an adult, always wanting things to be more fun and more colourful and more exciting. I know I do, always, in everything that I do, but I also know a lot of adults who don't. Secondly, we have to believe things are possible. That's difficult when we're grown-ups, when you've maybe got financial restrictions, you've got to work, you've got to pay a mortgage, etc. And I think also there's a lot of us out there that are overthinkers. The older we get, the more we overthink. Some of us are huge overthinkers. There's lots of anxiety in the world, so it's hard to believe that everything's possible. And lastly, this idea of things being worth the effort. As adults, that means something different. That means that in the short term, it's going to be awful, and we're going to have to work hard, and we're going on a journey of change. Whereas kids get excited about that stuff. So I've no idea if that answered your question, Gregor, but that's my take on it.
Well, one of the other things you mentioned in your TEDx talk was your first day as a primary school teacher, walking into the staff room and seeing all the gloomy faces on a Monday after they've had 2 days off.
Yeah.
Why do you think there's so many gloomy faces just in the world in general on a Monday after they've had 2 days off? Do you think is it just the wrong career choice? What?
No,
Why
I think. I think you get that in many workplaces, no matter what it is you've chosen to do. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's many schools I've worked in as a teacher, and in the job that I do now as a speaker, where you walk into a staff room in a primary or a secondary school and you're met by lots of smiling faces. But I think the challenge we have with Mondays in this world is that we have been trained for generations to believe that Mondays are the worst day of the week. I mean, there's people out there who lose their entire Sunday because tomorrow's Monday. There's people call it the Sunday sads, the Sunday blues. They talk about this thing called Blue Monday, which is officially recognised as the most unhappy and depressing day of the year, and it's the third Monday of every January. Now, Blue Monday was invented in 2005 by a marketing guy on behalf of a well-known high street travel agent to convince you and I and everyone else to part with our hard-earned cash and go book holidays. And they talked about things like how they based it on this formula of time of year, weather, the shortness of daylight, time passed since Christmas, debt accrued since Christmas, all that sort of stuff. But of course, it's all nonsense. They made the whole thing up. But what did we do in the UK? We accepted it. Why? Because we love it. There's an awful lot of people out there, I think, relish in the fact they get to wake up on a Monday and be like, oh, it's Monday again. I can't be bothered. I love Mondays, Gregor. And I talk about this a lot, and people are like, oh, you're weird. Why? A Monday is a seventh of my life. Like, there are people out there literally spend a seventh of their life a bit less happy because it's a Monday. My personal view on that is I don't think that's okay. So I do think there's been this thing that just my parents, I learned from them that Mondays were dreadful. Their parents taught them, their parents taught them. And, we need more people in the world to turn that around. So I say Friday, your Monday, shift that mindset and get cracking.
And what do you think? So you do another video that's on YouTube about you finding your why. So for anyone listening, maybe like a purpose, a calling, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Do you think schools are failing to help kids find their why? Help enough kids find their why?
That's a big question. That's a big question, Gregor, because I think... So the first thing I'm going to say is that I think there are some incredible teachers out there doing some absolutely unbelievable things to help young people and all across the country at all ages and all stages. And I think I know a lot of head teachers and a lot of deputies, a lot of teachers, a lot of classroom support staff who are on a day-to-day basis going above and beyond to help young people find their way in life, whether that's a why, a purpose, or just a simple, I might like to do this for a job, So, like I say, that's a really big question because I think I think the world in many ways is failing our young people when it comes to this stuff. I'm not sure if it's the schools that I'm sure there are people out there in schools that shouldn't be in schools. We all know that and are probably getting it really, really wrong. There's some terrible teachers out there, but I wouldn't ever dream of putting that on the schools. I think the world is failing young people in so many ways. And I think, as we are recording this right now, we're in the middle of a pandemic, it's whilst things are a bit better than they were, it's looking like it's not getting too good again. And I think COVID-19 aside, if we can move that out of the way for a minute, there is no better time for young people to be alive. I mean, you look at what they've got at their fingertips, you look at the technology, you look at, the extraordinary access that we have to everything and anything now. Now, that's not always a positive again, but I think, we need to realize and remember how incredible young people are. And give them the trust and the respect that they deserve. I think young people, particularly teenagers, get a rough ride in the press and the media. They're often described as, whether it's lazy, whether it's troublesome, whether it's bored, whether it's this. But actually, the work that we do in schools I meet teenagers continuously who are just so inspiring and are so keen to make a difference in the world and contribute something amazing. And I think schools actually do a pretty good job at giving them the opportunities and the platforms to do that. I think sometimes we maybe need to point the finger at parents a little bit. I think the teachers also get a rough ride when it comes to this stuff. So I think there's a huge amount of responsibility lies with the parents to encourage our young people to be considering their purpose in the world. It's a good thing to talk about around the dinner table, if we're even sitting at the dinner table anymore and not sitting staring at screens.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned in your book the importance of learning. Why do you think learning is important, not just for young people, but also just throughout life? Why is learning so important?
I think I'm one of these people that has a fear I'm going to get bored. I hate being bored. And I think, when you look at the science of boredom, actually, we need a wee bit of boredom in our lives. It has its benefits. But I think, if you go beyond that place of being bored, you start slipping into becoming just apathetic. You stop caring. And I never, ever want to be one of those people who stops caring about the world, about like just creating something brilliant for the world. And so it's not, learning's important, but learning how to learn is important. Again, this is great stuff that happens in our schools, but I'm always worried that I'm going to be one of these people that gets to a point where I retire and I realize I've just done the same thing every single day for my entire life. You mentioned at the start of this all the different things that I've done throughout my career. I'm one of these people that can't settle. It backfires sometimes. I can take on too much, get myself a bit stressed and a bit worn out, and that's always dangerous. But I think learning provides so many opportunities. It opens so many doors. It also helps you to close some doors. You can the more we spend our time investing in our personal learning, our personal development journey, the more we're able to work out actually what our purpose is and close the door on the bits of our life that are not making us happy. And I think that's really important. I think that's really key. I think, there's too many people out there allowing the negatives to play a pretty big role in their lives. Too many people having crap days. I'm a firm believer that you are what you think. And, there was a TV show years ago that used to tell us you are what you eat. Nonsense. You are what you think. And you and I will know lots of people, Gregor, who think in a particular way. And I try really hard every day to make sure I'm not one of them.
I feel like there's also this expectation in our society that pushes people to one thing. So you do that job, that's your job, you're going to do that for the rest of your life. Yeah. And it's the people who do all these different things, I mean, like yourself, but other examples would be Kevin Hart's a good example, because you could call him a stand-up comedian, but someone else could also call him a movie star. Yeah. Joe Rogan's another one. One person would call him a UFC commentator, one person with podcaster, one stand-up comedian. There's all these different things that no one ever really said you have to actually do one thing. You can go mix and match and do different things, and that'll cure the boredom.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, there's this fantastic initiative all across Scotland that's been running for the last few years in schools by developing the young workforce called No Wrong Path. And I love the sentiment behind No Wrong Path. If you look at most people's journeys to where they are now, it'd be so great if young people were able to have more access to that. And of course, that initiative's doing a great job. But, I think, when I left school, that was back in the late 90s when I finished high school, and you were very much expected to go to university, get a job, and that was you. And I love the fact that now that actually, well, the other thing that was interesting back then was if you didn't go to university, you were almost considered second best. Whereas now,
I feel like it was pretty much the same when I was at school as well.
Yeah, and it's nice to see that we're moving on and moving away from that now. And college, what college offers now is incredible. Apprenticeships are just extraordinary. Just or go straight into the world of work now and work your way up, or take a gap year. There is literally no wrong path, and I think by introducing more and more of this thinking in these initiatives is going to help our future generations to realize that you don't have to just stick to one thing. I mean, let's be honest, there's nothing wrong if you find your thing and that's you. But that was one of the things I loved about teaching, especially in the primary schools, is no 2 days were the same. Of course, you had a bit of structure, a bit of routine, but no 2 days were the same. You know, you had the same 25 kids or so from 9 o'clock till 3:30. And one day you're talking about Egyptians, the next day you're going to space. You know, the next day you're out doing physical education outside, and you know, then you're doing crazy experiments, and then you're making cakes, and just brilliant. And it keeps you on your toes. And that's one of the things I love about, you know, being a professional speaker now, is that when you are traveling the world and you are on a stage every day, it was the same with the comedy stuff. You don't have an opportunity to settle. You know, you have to be thinking about what's next. You have to be thinking about how you, even in the moment, you know, when you're on that stage and you've got 500 people sat in front of you, and you all of a sudden you find yourself going off on a tangent and you need to pull it back to the thing that they asked you to come and speak about. You know, your brain's just on the go. As I mentioned earlier, that can backfire sometimes. You can have a bit too much going on, but it's So no, I think it's important that we help people out there to understand that choice is good, and you're allowed to explore different options for sure.
For instance, talking about your public speaking, how did you get over fears of public speaking or getting on the stage? How did you just get over that and become a professional speaker? Because there's been times when I've been having to do talks or something like that at uni or stuff like that, and like the last one I've done, it was for sociological theory, which was like a different language to me. It generally was. Yeah. And it was in front of maybe about 15 people in that class. And I got up and I could feel my legs like shaking uncontrollably. And I was so sure no one could actually see, but I'm looking at people's faces and some of them are just staring down at my legs. And how can I be a better speaker? Maybe that's a better question.
Well, it's funny because I think, you know, the situation you're describing there, we've all been there, we've all had it, we've all felt it, and many of us continue to have it, maybe on a slightly different level than when we first started out. But there's a wonderful comic strip by a comedian called Damien Clark, an Australian guy, and it's just two cartoon comic strip boxes, and the top box says the view from the stage, and you're looking out as if you're looking out through the eyes of the comedian. So you see the top of the microphone, and all you see is like 100 faces rammed together, all smiling and laughing. And then the box below it, it says what the comedian sees. And every single face has been removed apart from one. And it's a really grumpy, angry looking face. And it's only when you see that you look back up to the top one and you realize that in amongst all the happy faces, he's still there, that wee grumpy guy. Yeah. And I think, you know, I've been doing this for a number of, I'm over, you know, I think I'm in my 16th or 17th year now as a professional speaker. And, you know, before that and during that, I've done comedy all over the world. I was a teacher before that. So even that, you know, up in front of an audience every day. And still to this day, it doesn't matter what event I'm talking at, whether it's a workshop with, 15 people or a giant room with 1,500 people, I still see that one person. And my eyes just keep going straight back to the grumpy one, the miserable one, the one that's not enjoying it, even though there's, 100 people in the room having a ball, or 99 out of 100 having a ball and one's not. It's all I can see and it's all I can think about. I can feel my heart going. So I guess I'm sharing that for your listeners to realise that actually it doesn't matter how experienced you are, we still get nervous. But your original question of how did I get over it, I just kept doing it. That's it. If I go back to the first time I did stand-up, 17 years old, I've never been on stage in my life, ever. I always had that sort of ambition to do comedy, but I'd never done any drama at school. I was too nervous, too shy. I was the kid that always took a beamer, always went red, and people took the piss out of me, and it was awful. So, but when I went to uni to be a primary school teacher, I found myself having to get up in front of 20 to 30 kids. And I realised that I have to learn to engage with them on a level that takes them on this journey every day where you entertain them, you enlighten them, and you educate them. You come in, you want to capture them straight away, and you want them to walk out the door feeling good and, and actually quite excited about coming back tomorrow. So when we started doing stand-up, in my head, it was the same thing. It's just it was adults rather than kids in the room. I had to capture them straight away, take them on a journey, entertain them, if I can enlighten them and educate them on something, that would be cool as well. And make sure they're walking out the door buzzing and thinking, I'd like to see that guy again. And that was my approach to it. But in all honesty, I have never been so scared as I was first gig. And I remember exactly where it was. It was Aberdeen University Student Union, the old student union that doesn't even exist anymore. And it was 1997. And it was called the Daily Telegraph Open Mic Awards. And it was myself and my mate Rory. We did a wee double act and we were given 5 minutes and we were on first and there was 250 people in the room. And do you know what? Even just thinking about it now, I can feel it. I can feel it in my chest. I feel like I'm going to like bulk. You know, it's not a nice feeling. And we decided, we worked really hard for it. Like we wrote this 5-piece like beautifully, and like we really, really honed it, and we rehearsed it and rehearsed it and rehearsed it. And we had this plan. We'll go for food beforehand. And of course, we both ordered food and we're sitting there staring at this plate of stuff. And I couldn't eat it. I thought it was going to be sick. It was absolutely horrendous. But as soon as we were on stage and got that first laugh in, it just kind of went away. And I came off stage 5 minutes later. It felt like about 3 seconds. The whole thing just flew past. But I came off stage and thought, I want to do that again. I want to feel that again. So a couple of weeks later, we got the chance to do another one. But this time, we bombed. We bombed. There was about 100 people booing, swearing, shouting, get off. Our stuff was all character-based sketches. People are shouting, would you just tell us an effing joke? And, oh, man, like it was awful. But then I came off stage and I was a bit flat for a couple of days, but then I kept remembering that first one thinking, but I want that feeling again. So I thought the only way to get that is to get better, to get back on stage, keep going. So we kept pushing and pushing with the comedy, finished my teaching degree, and then slowly but surely my career took a bit of a shift into out of the classroom and onto the stage with public speaking. And I still get nervous though. I still get really, really nervous to this day. Not as much as I used to, but if I'm doing something new, it's awful. Won't sleep the night before, but once it's done, it's the best feeling in the world.
And so, since you do a lot of different things, you must be fairly busy. But do you think busy is a good word? Is it good to say you're busy, or is there a better word or a better way of being? Because I think people do take pride in saying, "Oh, I'm so busy. I've been so busy this past weekend."
Yeah,
like is that good? Is that a good thing?
I think it's good to be productive. I think one of the biggest problems we have with busyness at the moment is there's an awful lot of people out there busy being busy. Like they're not doing anything. They're not actually being as creative or as productive as I bet that they want to be. So I think there's an awful lot of people just being busy, but they probably can't tell you actually what that means. I wrote a book a couple of years ago with Dr. Andy Cope. Now, Andy Cope is the UK's first ever Doctor of Happiness. He's an amazing guy, and the book was called Shine. And in Shine, we talk about we share a little saying that is, we think people should do less and be more. Now that'll mean different things to different people on all sorts of levels, but I love this idea of do less, be more. We live in a time where we are so busy, but it's our brains that are busy. If you think about, I mentioned earlier how incredible technology is, and it is. But if you think about the problems that it's causing as well, we've got the whole world. I mean, I've got my phone sitting beside me. We've got pretty much the entire world in our hands. Accessible, 24 hours a day. But that also means that I'm accessible 24 hours a day if I want to be. Some of us wake up in the morning and the first thing we do is we dive into our phones and we scroll. We go to bed at night. We lie beside our partners and we just scroll. That's not okay. There'll be lots of people listening to this and watching this who do just that. They don't talk anymore. They just scroll. Saturday night TV. I remember as a kid sitting down with my family to watch things like Knight Rider and Gladiators and Baywatch and the A-Team. But as a family, we were in it together. Like we laughed and cheered and whooped and gasped together at the same time. Whereas, a lot of families don't do that now because, well, they've just looked at Facebook 10 times. They're Snapchatting, they're Instagramming, they've checked their emails. And actually, there's not just the TV screen on the go. There's probably 5 or 6 screens in that room that are on the go. So we're all physically in the same room, but we're not present. And the science and psychology behind that is no different from me then just being in another town. It has the exact same impact on the other humans in the room. So I think we live in a time where we are too busy in our heads, rather than being productive in our work or our art or whatever it is that we do. So do I think busy is a good word? I think it's okay to be busy. Depends on what you're busy doing, I guess. And if you're just busy sitting thinking and thinking and thinking and thinking and worrying and stressing, it's not helpful, and it's unhealthy, and we need to look out for each other and look out for ourselves, if people are allowing their brains to get a wee bit too busy. Can you imagine how many miles we've scrolled with our thumbs, Gregor?
Yeah.
A million years from now, we're just going to be thumbs.
Yeah, that's a worrying thought. What advice would you have then for being better with technology or better with social media, to avoid the negative tropes of it?
Well, I mean, social media can, as we know, is an amazing thing. It can be really useful and really helpful, and there's a lot of great people to connect with and a lot of great things to learn about. I think what's really important for me personally is to switch off, to make the effort, to purposefully switch off my phone. I removed a lot of apps from my phone about 2 years ago. Things like Facebook. I removed the app so that in order for me to check my Facebook, I have to log in. And let's be honest, we live in a time now where we can't be bothered logging in anymore. We just want everything instantly. So actually, I tend to look at Facebook. Well, I do look at Facebook way, way less than I used to. And it might sound a bit dramatic, but I feel healthier for it, Gregor. I actually feel better for it. I think, I removed quite a lot of stuff off my phone, actually. So therefore, I found myself looking at my phone less and less. Of course, what's been interesting during lockdown is we're all looking at screens more and more. I mean, my entire day now is Zoom and Teams and Google Hangouts and recording videos and doing live virtual presentations for businesses and schools. Well, not schools recently, obviously they're on holiday, but I think it's important that people turn off. Especially if you have, especially if you've got family. Especially if you've got, even if you don't have kids, you should do this. But I think I have a huge concern about families all just sitting at home with their heads down. Not talking to each other. I was speaking to a play specialist who was telling me about this worry that they have with kids who are very, very young before, coming into nursery. And they talk about this thing called flat hand syndrome. I don't know if you've heard of this, but if you imagine, so if I take this notebook, for example, if you imagine that's a tablet, an iPad or something, when you're 2, you don't scroll with your thumbs. You do that. And of course, this flat hand syndrome is coming from the fact that so many kids just get handed a tablet now. That's it. Wow. There you go. There's a tablet. So they're sitting for so long, so many hours in a day, just doing that they then come to nursery or primary and struggle to maybe hold a pencil or play with Lego or manipulate like Play-Doh or something like that. And you just think that's worrying. Really not okay, And then they also talked about the lack of eye contact and how so many young kids are struggling to look you in the eye because at home, when they're talking to mum and dad are doing this. So I'm all for technology, Gregor. It plays a huge part in my business and in my life. As a family, I've got 2 young kids and my wife, and we use a lot of technology, but we make a real conscious effort to switch off and get some board games out. A real conscious effort to switch off. I mean, my son's 12, right? He's that perfect age where he's got his first phone, he's got a Nintendo Switch, and if he was allowed, that'd be his life. That would be his life. YouTube, the Switch, Reddit, everything that's going, but we don't allow it. And it was important for us to start that early, right from the off. When he only got his phone when he turned 12, and I know there's people out there who hand iPhones to 7-year-olds and 8-year-olds, which blows my mind. But anyway, I even struggled giving it to my son Kian. Like I say, he turned 12, and I didn't want to give him a phone. But then you have that dilemma of, is he going to be the only kid that doesn't have one? Blah, blah, blah. And I can assure you, he didn't get an iPhone. So yeah, I think there's some real positives. There's great. I mean, I've got issues with my lower back at the moment, and that's because I'm sitting in front of a screen. My whole life has been standing up in front of groups of people, but for 5 months I've been sitting looking at a screen. So I found this incredible app that's all to do with mobility and stretching, and it puts you through the series of tests to pinpoint where you're struggling with your mobility. And now this app helps me every day. There's a 10-minute moment where it lets me know I've got to do these particular stretches. It shows me the ones to do for the bit of my back. That's amazing. And it's actually working. Like, it's making my back. But that all happened through my phone. So there is a side to technology that is phenomenal. But I do worry. I always remember a discussion I had with a group of young kids in a school. And I said, I'm old enough to remember what it was like to have no mobile phone. Now, they thought this was hilarious. They all just erupted into laughter. Instantly made me old. But the first question that came straight away was, but how did you speak to your friends? And I just thought, wow, okay. And I was like, we did this. We spoke words face to face. You went to their house. They thought I was absolutely crazy. So yeah. What about you? Do you think? Would you say that you use yours a lot? Do you think you take enough time away from your phone and apps and things?
I would say yes, recently. So I did the same thing as you. So I deleted Facebook and Instagram and Snapchat, but I didn't use that like much anyway. But I deleted them off my phone for a while, and I wouldn't look at them at all. The only time I would look at them is I'd maybe go on Facebook through a computer, maybe once a week, something like that. And then it's only been like the start of lockdown, I re-downloaded them again, and I found I had changed my habit, because before I would keep scrolling. Now I don't scroll at all. Yeah. Like on Instagram, I'll maybe just see what my friends are up to, and that's it. Which is probably, it's a pretty good way of being, because I think once I did that, I felt a bit closer to my friends because I was able to see what they were doing before I wasn't able to do that. Yeah. So I think I'm getting the positive aspects of social media without all the negative parts.
Yeah, I get it.
The scary thing about Facebook is when you learn about all the psychological tricks they're using. Yeah. And on iPhones as well, the little red notification number, that's red because that plays something in our mind to make us want to get rid of it. And social media, like Facebook, got rid of the scrolling loading thing so that you just keep scrolling. So it would never stop.
It's unreal.
It's crazy. And the other thing, just when we're talking about that, it's a great quote about Facebook and Instagram is, Facebook and Instagram is an advertising company that happens to have social media on it. Yeah. Which I thought was great, because there's scary times where you talk about something and then you go on Facebook and it's there. It's getting advertised there.
You're right. It's so scary. I mean, it happened. So every time I go on, I think, hang on, I was literally just talking to my wife about this, or I looked at that, and it's but where does it end? This is the thing. I mean, you see these guys that own these big companies on the news. They're all in court. They're too powerful now. They're making too much money. There's no one else can get into the market. I just think I'm loving the fact that they're now pulling people like Trump up on certain issues. You know, was it just yesterday there was they temporarily suspended his account or something because there was he was spreading misinformation about COVID-19, and okay, it's a start, but they need to police this so much more. I mean, again, I'm all for free speech, but there are people on. See, Twitter for me. Of course, you can choose who you follow. That's the great thing about it. But Twitter has become just poison. Like, I cannot believe the stuff that we see and read now. And I don't follow people that I think would say these things, but I'm still seeing it because, of course, people can share stuff and all that. And I think, it's scary times when it comes to social. But I think as individuals, we can all make that conscious decision. And, you know, I look at Facebook every now and then and I think, why are you on my Facebook? Like, I don't even know you. Like, we went to school together, okay, but I haven't seen you for, I don't know, 20 years. And why am I reading about the fact you've just washed your car? And actually, you only posted that to show us that you've got an Audi anyway. It's, I think I look forward to a time where I think I've weaned myself off entirely, and I'm using the word wean deliberately because I think we are full-on addicts, to be honest.
Yeah, I think the problem with two points there. with Facebook, with people I don't know, I tend to do almost like a cleanse, like maybe once a year. Well, I'll go through my friends, and if I haven't spoken to them in that last year, or I've not got anything positive from what they've posted, I'll just delete them. There's no need to have them on.
Yeah.
And with the problem I think with Twitter is you've got such extreme views, and that's maybe 5%, but 1% of the population are on Twitter. They're either spewing like hatred and bigotry and stuff like that, or it's the highly sensitive ones that are pulling people up for something they've maybe said 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And the problem with that is politicians listen to them, and they're only one. That's not the general population. The general population doesn't really care about any of that.
Yeah.
So I think that's another problem with specifically Twitter, is that's where you're seeing a lot of the extreme views, and it's getting listened to.
Yeah, no, it's. I actually, I came across I don't post anything political ever. It's just, for me, it's just not worth. It's not worth the hassle. Of course, I have views on things and whatever else, but I don't get involved with that side of things and on social media. But I happened to see somebody posting something to do with what's going on in politics, and I just found myself just looking at some of the comments. And this is just about maybe 3-4 weeks ago, maybe 5. And I spotted a name of somebody that left a comment that I recognised from back at school. And I thought, oh, it's quite a common name. Sure, it's not him. No, it turns out it is him. So this is a guy from my hometown that I went to school with. So I followed him, just because that's obviously what you do. And I thought, I've not seen him for years. Be interested to see what he's up to. And it turns out he is an absolute troll, if I can use the proper term for it. Proper right-wing, horrible, nasty, like sharing Katie Hopkins type stuff before she got booted, of course. And I was just like, I couldn't believe what I was saying. So I've instantly unfollowed. But I was just thinking, we grew up, same town, same age, same similar sort of upbringing, same school, same background and all that sort of stuff. And I'm just looking at it going, what happened to you? Like, how have you got so angry? How have you got so awful? And some of the comments he's putting out, I was just like, right, I'm out. I don't want anything to do with this person whatsoever. It's horrible to see.
So moving back, this is something I was thinking with your book. This might contradict. It might sound like I'm contradicting a lot of what you're saying in the book. That's not the case. It's the opposite. But I wrote it down because this is something quite like deep. Like it's quite deep thinking, I think. Anyway, so I'm about to study philosophy in September.
Right.
So I've been looking at this idea of like free will and the idea that we can do what we want. And there's an idea that that's not the case. It's an illusion. Like, we don't actually have any free will. We're just the culmination of everything that's happened until this point. So being brought up where we're brought up, the country we're in, the society we're in, our friends, stuff like that. That's everything. That me saying this to you, I'm not choosing to say it. It's just, do you know what I mean? External factors up to that. So, and it's, if we put it in perspective to the book, I wouldn't be reading the book. We wouldn't be having this conversation if I didn't go to Queensferry High School and I didn't get taught by your wife.
Yep.
My favorite teacher in that school. So does that, do you think that contradicts what you say in the book, or do you think it does the opposite? Because, I mean, if we're thinking we don't have any free will, me reading that book will do something for me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a tricky one.
Man, that is deep, Gregor.
That's the only one. That's the only deep question.
I'm all right with it. I mean, I get, as you've read in the book, chapter 6. Yep, I got a bit deep. More than I was expecting to, I might add. Man, that's a good one. Right. I think. So I do believe that our upbringing, I guess, does have an input and does play a factor in who we become. There's a book, I'm trying to remember, there was a book I read years ago by Malcolm Gladwell, What was it called? Outliers.
Okay.
Outliers? I'm maybe making this up. No, I think it's called Outliers. And I'm
I'll put it
sure,
in the notes when I'll find out when
yeah,
we finish.
I'm sure that's what this book was about. It was about how where you're brought up, this, that, next thing, and it all plays that part in where you are today, and who you become. Um, I don't know how to answer that question without probably making the whole thing really confusing.
Yeah, fair enough.
That's a tough one, but it's
Yeah.
going to play on my mind, Gregor. So thanks for that.
Good. That'll make me happy. So we'll try an easier one. So do you think it's important to be doing something you want to do right now, and instead of, you get a lot of people who maybe do a job right now that they don't want to do, that they hate, and they're looking into the future, they're either make more money in the future if they keep going with that job, but they'll still end up with a job they don't want to do. Do you think it's important to, no matter what, be doing something you want to do now, still pushing yourself?
I think it's important to see the good in what you're doing now. There are an awful lot of us out there doing something which is a means to an end. But what you don't want to do is wish the now away to get to the end. I think, one of the things I talk about in the book is, when I was a teenager, I wanted to make it. Like, what even is that? Like, what does that even mean? And I found myself in my 20s still wanting to make it. But what does that mean? And it wasn't until my first attempt at comedy all came crashing down around me. And I look back and I think it took me all over the world. I met the best people I've ever met in my life, had the most extraordinary life experiences. I didn't become a millionaire from it, and I didn't get my own TV show. So did I fail, or did I actually have the best time ever? And it took me years to look back and go, I totally made it. If making it is being happy and being content and forming brilliant relationships and being creative, with your brain, like that for me is now, that's making it. So I think there's nothing. So to go to your question, then, I don't think there is any problem with people doing something now to get to somewhere else. The problem lies where in the now, if you are hating it, if you are not feeling grateful for where you are and what you have. Because even in the work that I do now, like there's moments I don't enjoy it, but I know that it doesn't matter what I do in my life, doesn't matter what your job is, there's going to be bits of it that you don't like as much. There's going to be bits that are a bit more tiring than others, bits that are a bit more stressful or irritating, and you're going to meet a lot of people who are arseholes. You just are. But how you choose to see that is, for me, that's the key part. It's it's the perspective that you create for yourself. It's the context that you put it in for yourself. And I mentioned earlier that you are what you think. And if you want to spend your whole day thinking that this is rubbish, this is terrible, the world's against me, I hate this, I'm bored, I'm fed up, well, guess what? You're probably going to feel like that for a long, long time. So for me, it's just making sure that we get our thinking sorted. You are what you think. And I also believe that thoughts become things. The more we focus on a particular way of thinking, the more it starts to come out of you. And that's what you start putting out into the world. And if what you're putting out to the world is particularly negative, the chances are you'll draw in a lot of other negative people. You'll find yourself surrounded by people like that. And it's that downward spiral. And then it's hard to get to wherever it is that you set out to go to in the first place.
Yeah, I think, the idea of making it, that part in the book really struck a chord with me, because when I first started this podcast, it was with the idea of, I'll do this podcast for a wee while and then someone will pick it up, then they'll pay me for it and I'll be famous and stuff like that. And then the more I actually thought about it, I wrote an article on this specifically, was if I did this podcast for 10 years, once a month, and I spoke to all these interesting people and I didn't make a penny from it, I'd probably lost money from it. I would say that's a success, because that's 10 years of talking to people that not a lot of other people will be able to speak to.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely spot on. And I think the amount of connections you'll make, the amount of stories you'll be able to share, not just between the two of us, but to the world, the things you'll learn, the ideas that it plants in your head that you might go and pursue. I think you're absolutely right. we, myself and a friend of mine, Kevin McMahon, who's a fellow performer.
Quantum.
Sorry?
Quantum.
Well, yep. Well, for the benefit of your listeners, I better explain why you corrected me there. So Kevin's real name is Kevin McMahon. His stage name is Kevin Quantum. He is described as a magician, a scientist magician hybrid. And he's a very successful performer who is on Britain's Got Talent at the moment, albeit that's all on hold with everything that's been going on. But and him and I performed in a show called The Colour Ham with another performer called Colin Cloud for many, many years. And so we started doing our show-offs podcast during lockdown. And when we were, just to go back to your point there, when we were looking to do this, we were like, right, let's do a wee online course to make sure we know what we're doing here and what the best platforms are. And we chose like StreamYard and Captivate and all these kind of things, made sure it had a decent microphone and decent camera and whatever else. But right at the start, we sat down and said, right, why are we doing this? And the answer was because we love talking to each other. And that was it. And we want to meet some cool people. And that's it. And we want to make people smile. That's it. And we said, as soon as this becomes like it did when we were at the top of our game with the Colour Ham and it was taking us all over and we were doing sellout runs at the Fringe and playing London and all this sort of stuff, it stopped being fun because the stress and the pressure and the expectations were just becoming too much. And actually our relationships were getting strained. We were talking to each other less and less. We were finding it hard to find time to rehearse with each other. And we said that the whole thinking behind the podcast is to take all the lovely bits and make sure that none of the rubbish bits happen. And if it gets stressful, if we start getting annoyed with each other, we just call it a day. So I think it's important that wherever you're at, whatever you're doing, even if you do a job that you don't really enjoy, I think it's worth making the effort and taking the time to see the good stuff, to see and hear and feel and share as many positives in your life as you possibly can. We're not here very long. We don't live for very long when you think about it. It's 4,000 weeks. That won't sound a lot to many people, but it's 4,000 weeks. I think that's what 28 or 29,000 days or something like that. It's not much, but that's 28 or 29,000 opportunities to get out your bed every day and make an effort to feel good and to look after yourself and to put some goodness out in the world. And do you know what, Gregor? Right now, the world needs a bit of goodness.
I think going to that as well, it's 4,000 weeks is your life. And the other thing, if we do it specifically for people, is when a person moves out of their parents' house, they've spent, I think it's 80% of their time with their parents they're ever going to spend. So, that's another thing that maybe keep in mind with on your phone when you're with your parents, when you're in your family. Just remember that time is you've not got that much time.
Well, no, that's it, and I think that resonates with me. I mean, I lost my dad, and I mean, I remember, when he died, albeit there wasn't, I wasn't as much of a phone user, shall we say, at that point. I just always remember thinking, man, didn't get very long with him, and yeah, life is. They say it's short, and people talk about how you only live once. Well, actually, you don't. You live these 29,000 moments. You die once. I describe it in the book as story writers talk about beginning, middle, and an end. And I've got a friend that's an author who talks about the saggy middle of a book, and how it's easy to get it all kicked off and it's easy to bring it to an end, but it's that bit in the middle that you lose people. And yet, life is a big sandwich. You're born, that's the easy bit. Not for mum, that's really difficult for her. But for you don't have to do anything. Yeah. You die. Now, it might not be particularly pleasant, but it's going to happen. The bit in the middle, the filling, that's up to you. And life is just a big sandwich, and you're either going to have a shit sandwich or something spectacular. And whilst there's a lot of external things influence that, there are huge there is a huge number of moments in life where we get to determine what that looks like and feels like. And I think it's worth the effort.
Yeah. So lastly, with these kind of idea questions, how do you deal with self-doubt, or how do you mask it effectively then? That's maybe
So your first question, how do I deal with it? Very badly. Do you know, I came to a realization when I was writing Life Will See You Now, that I have had real moments in my life where I've really self-doubted myself, like really been really down on myself, really critical, full on imposter syndrome. You know, I'm very fortunate that I get to speak at some incredible events, meet some incredible people, and I stand off at the side of the room just thinking, why am I here? Why? You know, I remember getting booked by Nike to fly. They wanted to fly me down to London to talk to their one of their creative teams. And I remember thinking, why has the director of marketing at Nike phoned me? And it turns out he's read my books and likes how I think and what I say. But mate, the whole journey, I was just shitting myself. You know, apologies for a wee swear word there, but I was just, I was absolutely shitting myself. And I remember getting in the room and I met him and we were chatting away and he said, right, the team will be in any minute. And I'm just thinking, this is insane. Like, why have they come to me? I'm just a ex-primary school teacher. So I do doubt myself a lot, and I've managed to perform my way through many, many situations. I think it's important that people know that it's okay to have self-doubt. It's okay to be anxious about things. You know, we need anxiety to live. You know, it keeps us alive. Most people have that anxiety or a bit of self-doubt at that sort of low level. If you're like me, unfortunately, every now and then it can flare up. And sometimes it can absolutely explode and cause me real problems, real sleepless nights for weeks and weeks and weeks. But that's been me since I was a kid. I think accepting it, you know, this is a bit of a sort of mindfulness trick. I think, you know, when you are doubting yourself or if you are worried or anxious about anything, you know, you acknowledge it, let it in, show it around, but show it the door as well. You know, don't let it hang about too much, because if you do, well, it'll stay with you for a very, very long time. You know, I had my most recent run-in was Easter 2018, having gone years and years with not, you know, thinking, oh yeah, I don't really have anxiety anymore like I did as a teenager. And I organised an event for 12,000 people at the Hydro in Glasgow. And as I was doing that, everything was going great. You know, we had 14,500 people registered instantly in 24 hours. We had to close the website, and I'm going, yeah, it's going to be amazing. I'd raised loads of money to make it happen. This is going to be great. And then slowly but surely, wee things like people saying, you know, a few schools won't turn up, you know that. And I'm going, well, of course I know that. But they're going, yeah, but it'll be quite a few. You'll probably have 2,000 or 3,000 empty seats on the day. And I'm going, but hang on, why would they do that to me? And they're going, no, that's normal, because they're schools, things happen. And then somebody's saying, yeah, you'll probably not be able to pull it off. And I'm going, well, hang on, why would you say that to me? And all these wee seeds of doubt just started coming in. I had a full-on meltdown, Gregor, in 2018. I'm talking 3 months of not sleeping. Had to go to the doctor. I didn't need any. I chose not to take any medication, but I had to work unbelievably hard to overcome that and get through that. Which is very hard when your job is to get up in front of lots of people and, you know, be the star of the show and perform and inspire and lift a room of people and be the funny guy, when actually all you want to do is lie in your bed and cry for 24 hours. So I think I realise I've gone off on a bit of a tangent there, but I think when it comes to how you think and feel about yourself, you know, we are our own worst critics, our own worst enemies, and we can give ourselves an absolute kicking, and we don't need to do that. You know, it's okay to doubt yourself, but don't do it for too long.
Yeah. I'm trying to be aware of your time. Are we still okay for time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. Yeah.
Perfect. So we'll move on to the book, which I have here for
awesome.
anyone. There it is. Now, for anyone who doesn't know, just want to what it's about.
So it's called Life Will See You Now. There is also a much longer subtitle with a sweary word in it.
Say it.
So the subtitle is Quit Waiting for the Light at the End of the Tunnel and Light That Fucker Up for Yourself. I couldn't believe the publisher said yes to that.
Yeah.
I mean, I know there's a lot of books out there that have swear words on the title and stuff, but I don't know, I just didn't expect them to say yes. Life Will See You Now for me. I mentioned earlier I had an obsession with comedy. Growing up, I had another obsession, which is music. Now, I myself I'm not musical. I don't play any musical instruments. I would love to. As you know, my wife is a phenomenal musician and taught music for many years before becoming a deputy head teacher of the high school. And she's incredibly talented, and our kids are showing that as well. And I'm in awe of anybody who's musical. But I loved music, still do, and I bought the most ridiculous amount of albums. Now again, this is pre streaming days. You know, there was no such thing, and there were certain albums in my life that, from the age of like 14, 15, stayed with me. And right now, I mean, I'm 41 now, and there are certain albums that I still go back to. Like this morning, I went out a run this morning. I was meant to be running the London Marathon this year, but of course it's all been postponed, and found out that I'm deferring to next year now, which is great, but I need to keep up the training. So I was out this morning. I can't run without my music in. And this morning I was running it was a sort of mix playlist that I've created that is just all rock tunes from the 90s when I was a teenager in school. And they still make me feel the same way that they did then. So when I was writing the book, I was thinking about one particular album, which, as you know, I write about in the book, and it's Dookie by Green Day. And that album for me, when I was 14, 15, I just remember it having this impact where there was certain tracks that lifted me. There were certain tracks that made me feel incredible, that blew my mind. There were certain tracks that brought me down. There were certain tracks that made me feel angry. There was tracks that made me feel sad. There was lyrics that excited me. There was lyrics that confused me. There was lyrics that made me go, oh my goodness, I can't believe they're saying that. And then there was a hidden track, which came about 10 minutes after the final track ended, and you only heard it if you left the cassette or the CD running. And I love the fact that there's a couple of tracks on there that weren't my favourite, but 9 months later, they were my favourite. And, you know, the growers, if you like. And I wanted to write a book that did that. I wanted to write a book that people would take with them for the rest of their life, that they would go back to, that there would be that chapter or track, if you like, that blew your mind, the one that made you laugh, the one that made you cry, the one that made you go, that's weird. But then 6 months later in your life, that's the chapter or the track that you needed, or the piece of advice that you need. So off you go again. And then there's that weird hidden track. Not that there's a hidden chapter, but there is chapter 6, Confidently Lost, which has come out of nowhere for some people and caused a wee bit of a stir. I've had people from all over the world getting in touch saying, I didn't realise that this happens to you, and I thought I was the only one, and it's so lovely to hear and to read you being so open about your mental health and all this kind of stuff. So I think that was the thinking behind the book, was I wanted to create a piece of work that people would take with them, but I wanted it to be uplifting. I wanted it to be funny. I wanted it to be not let's call it not a normal personal development or self-help. I don't really like the phrase self-help. Not that there's anything wrong with self-help, but I think I wanted it to be different from the norm. So it's very personal. It's basically just a big story about me. It was funny because it got one of the reviews that it got. It was a 5-star review, I might add, but the review said, "This isn't self-help. This is Gav help. He wrote the damn thing for himself." And actually, it wasn't until I read the review that I thought, "Oh my God, I wrote this at a time when I was really struggling, when I shouldn't have been." Because 2018, Gregor, was meant to be the greatest year of my life. On paper, we filled the hydro. My first book came out and instantly became a bestseller. That was Shine. My business was turning over more than it's ever turned over. My family were all healthy. Everything. I moved to a beautiful new house. I ran the London Marathon for the first time. I was the fittest I'd ever been. Like everything on paper was perfect, but I took on too much. Going back to our conversation earlier about being busy, my God, was I busy being busy, and it broke me. And it wasn't until that review came in that I realised that I had actually started writing this book as I was coming out of that, and I wrote the book that I needed. And I'm just very, very grateful that it seems to be a book that many other people needed as well. Who would have thought that I would release a book like this just a few weeks before a global pandemic? We've had NHS frontline staff getting in touch saying this is the book that's, as a team, that we've been using to get through this. I'm out at that point. That's blown my mind. If that was the only bit of feedback I ever got, then that's dream come true stuff right there. I always said I'd love to know that somebody bought it that's not my mum or not a close family friend or a family member. If someone who's got no connection to me whatsoever. So I'm sorry, Gregor, you don't count because there is a connection there. But that idea that someone who's never met me, don't know my family, or anything like that, walks into a shop, picks that up off the shelf and goes, "Oh yeah, that's the one." That's enough for me.
Yeah. Well, the thing I really like about it, I think right now we're living in a kind of self-improvement, like live your best life world, where there's it's like everyone's cashing in on that. So there's a lot of people like on Instagram with their like vague motivational quotes and stuff like that. That's not me implying that's what you're doing. It's the opposite. The thing that I think was different about the book was three things actually. I wrote them down. It was relatability, because there's a lot of things in there where I was reading it, I was like, that's actually me. That's what I was thinking. It's the exact same thing I was thinking. I just hadn't put it on paper. That's relatability, honesty, and vulnerability. I think too many books, when they talk about self-improvement, they only talk about the very positive stuff, the way you should be trying to be, rather than how you might be feeling now. Was that like in your mind when you were writing it? Like were you trying to get that across?
Yes and no, I think is the fair answer there. A lot of the stuff in that book kind of came out unexpectedly. I make a lot of notes as I go. I'm writing another 2 books at the moment. They're not out for a long, long time. The first manuscripts don't need to be handed in till I think it's August next year. So it's a long way off. So I'm at the stage where I'm not sitting writing the book. I've just got, talk about phones again. Like my phone is just loaded with sentences, words, phrases that I hear that I just think, oh, that's nice. I'll bash that in and I might use it, I might not. And I think there was some of the stuff in that book is very deliberate, but there's stuff that as I was typing, I just found it all coming out. And I'll go back to chapter 6 again for a moment, which I mentioned is called Confidently Lost. I hadn't planned on that going in. I found the wee notebook where I had written my thoughts from the hot tub at 4 a.m. in the morning as I was having my massive wobble, if we can call it that. When I found that, I was like, I'm going to try and write something around that and see what comes out, but it's not for the book. I think it was just for my own mind. And it was probably the bit of the book that actually came out most naturally. But then I had that dilemma of, do I put it in? Do I show that much vulnerability? Do I show that much openness and honesty? Because it goes against everything that I'm meant to be in my work. Because people are always like, you tend to only see me on a stage being really positive and upbeat about life. But of course, I'm a human being, and that means I'm no different from anybody else. And I have my ups and downs, my great days and crap days and so on. So I think, I think there's aspects of the vulnerability I wanted to be in there, but I think I went much further than I was planning to. And it was only when I read it as a whole piece, as a finished body of work, that I kind of went, oh my God, okay, it works. Sent it off to the publisher, and I said to them, look, I want I know your proofreaders, your copy editors will go through this, but the two people, my agent, I said to her and the head of marketing, I want you to read it first as a reader, not as a judge. I want you to read it as if you'd bought it, and I need you to be honest with me. And they both came back and just went, "Oh my God, just leave it as is." I was like, "Okay." So, but I was really nervous about it coming out. We had a book launch at Waterson's on Princes Street in Edinburgh, and of course that was my first ever proper book launch where there's lots of people turn up, and it's not just my mum. It's lots of strangers turned up, and there was over 100 people that I don't know. Well, some of them I knew, but there was a lot I didn't. And I remember thinking, and there was a live interview that night, and the guy, a friend of mine called John Loughton, who's an amazing speaker, I asked him to host it for me, and he said, "I'm going to talk to you about that chapter." And oh man, I didn't sleep the night before, but it turns out, 41, and I'm only just discovering that we're all essentially the same. Everybody has these moments. So yeah, I think there's bits in there that weren't planned, and bits that definitely were.
Yeah, and so we've spoke about the podcast before, but one thing I found that you did episodes live. How do you think that changes? How is that different to doing it recorded, where you can edit it and you have to tiptoe around what you're saying, stuff like that?
Yeah, so what's interesting is actually we started out not doing it live, and we started recording a whole bunch of them at the start of lockdown, and we had, I think it was 6 episodes recorded, where Kev was in his house, obviously I was in mine, and then we used Zoom as we are now to record, but we also had, not that it's anything to do with this Zoom, the Zoom microphones. We had, I don't know if you've seen it, so we had them. I had one in my house, he had one in his, so it was to make sure that the sound was absolutely top notch, and we did a couple with a couple of guests, and we were really enjoying it. But then we were kind of like, we felt like there was something missing. Now, bear in mind, the two of us have been performing live for over 20 years, and that's the thing that was missing, was a live audience, just that extra wee edginess, just that wee extra buzz of knowing that it's happening right now. And of course, we use a platform called StreamYard, and it's great because people can converse with us. Now, it's okay, it's just written comments, but it's brilliant. People can leave comments, we can bring in questions, you can bring people in, and it feels a wee bit more like a live radio show, I guess. But yeah, no, that was it. It was just, we felt for us as performers, I mean, the show's called Show-Offs, because we are just show-offs, really. I mean, it's not about show-offs that are like dicks. It's it's show-offs as in anybody who's ever just dared to show themselves off, their thinking, their work, their creativity, their art, their business, their skill, their passion, their talent, whatever it is. Anybody that's ever just thought, you know what, I'm going for it. I'm going to put myself out there to the world to be judged, to be looked at, and they might love it, they might not. So yeah, that live element just brought that wee bit of excitement back. And do we have to tiptoe around? We do. I mean, I think if I go back to some of the comedy we did together in The Colour Ham, I mean, there's probably some of that wouldn't really be acceptable now. I mean, don't get me wrong, it wasn't like horrendous, but I just, with everything that's going on, I just think there's one or two wee things. So yeah, you do need to be wary of what you say, but we go out at 9 o'clock, and that's deliberate as well, so that it's okay to swear at that point. And this podcast it's not a business related podcast, because I thought about doing that. I was going to do my Gavin Oattes Life Will See You Now podcast, and it'd be all mindset, inspiration, creativity stuff. I don't know. There was something about getting back on a screen with Kev and just being silly. So that's what it is. It's a chance. It's an hour out. It's an hour out of your week to just forget all about work, forget about COVID, and just enjoy some fun conversations.
And what guests have you had on, and what guests are you planning on having on?
So the first guest we had was Jason Byrne. who is, I mean, a world-renowned stand-up comedian. I think he's the one comedian in the world who has played the Fringe more than any other. I think he's done a sellout show at the Fringe every year for the last. I think it's since the early 90s. He is just a force of nature. The guy is brilliant. And him and I bonded a few months ago. He happened to buy my books, and we just ended up getting in touch, and we've become good friends. And yet we've never actually met. But we chat on the phone, and so he's great, and he's a superstar in the world of comedy. So he was brilliant. And then a week or two ago, we had a guy called Larry Kenny. And Larry Kenny is a voiceover artist, and he was the voice of Lino in a show called Thundercats, which was on when we were wee boys. And we were talking about who we would want, and Kev jokingly said, "I want Lino from Thundercats." And somehow the dude went and made it happen. So that was amazing. That was really cool. I mean, that was, as I mentioned earlier, I'm 41 now, but that instantly took me back to being 5.
Yeah.
And 6 years of age, and just thinking, this is amazing. Future guests, we have a couple in the works who I won't name because it's not guaranteed. But people that we are desperate to get on are someone called Tiffany, who's a pop star from the 80s, who might not mean anything to you, Gregor. I'm not sure.
No, I know.
But
from listening to the podcast, I know. Just based on the song, I know the song. I would never.
Well, this is it. Yeah, this is it. And that was due to our first show, deciding who our dream guest would be. So she's mine. Can't get a response at the moment at all from anybody. But we have a couple more of our friends from the comedy world lined up. But we are going to start reaching out to some really interesting, obscure people from really different walks of life, because we don't want our podcast to be normal in any way whatsoever. Because originally, when we started looking at guests we could have on, we were starting to realise it's just the same guests that every other show is having on. So that's why we started thinking about people like Lino from Thundercats and Tiffany. So yeah, reaching out to a few people at the moment, but don't want to give any names just yet. But we're hoping to have people from, like I say, all interesting, unique, bizarre, weird worlds, who are up for coming on and sharing their ability to show off.
Yeah. And so you play a lot of games on the podcast. Have you got a quick one we can do now?
Right, okay. How many weeks have you tuned in?
2. I've listened to the first 2 episodes.
Okay. I'm trying to think. So there's a game we play on the show called Word or Not a Word. And I'm now, I see you've caught me out here because I'm now trying to remember what the words were. I think in the first week the word was overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Is it a word or is it not a word? Whelmed. Yeah, and of course, whelmed is a word because it turns out that overwhelmed actually isn't a word because they both mean the same thing. I'm trying to remember, was week 2 Bigly?
The two games I remember was that one and the one with the 2 words, and you're trying to get from one word to the other word through association, which was just crazy.
Bananas in Pajamas, it's called. That's right. Are you up for a game of Bananas in Pajamas?
Yeah, let's do it. What I should have done is probably asked someone who's going to be listening, give me 2 words, because now I'm trying to think of very obscure words.
Yeah, well, no, actually, I'm going to give you the words, and then.
Oh.
So I think.
I see.
I think it's only fair that you put the effort in here. Sure, show. So just to explain to everyone, then, basically, Bananas in Pajamas is this idea that you get 2 words, and so let's, for example, start with banana, and you have to find your way through to the word pajamas. So bananas are yellow. The sun is yellow. You might wear shorts and t-shirt in the sun because it's warm, and shorts and t-shirt are a type of clothing, as are pajamas. Right, that was a rubbish example, but that is essentially how you get from one to the other. So your words are goat.
Oh God, okay.
And submarine.
Goat and submarine. Okay.
You're going to be regretting this now.
Yeah, I really am. Right. Okay. I need to think of my feet. So I'm just gonna waffle. Goat. Field. Plants. Rain. Water.
Oh, I see what's
Submarine.
happening.
There we go. Easy.
Yeah, absolutely. It's much easier than you realise.
Yeah.
But right, so another game I was talking about there was word or not a word. So there's one week where we used the word bigly, which was a word that President Trump, of course, used a couple of years ago and got absolutely ripped for. So is bigly a word or not?
See, I think it probably could be a word. I feel like it's one of those strange words that like Shakespeare would have used that doesn't sound like betwixt. It just doesn't sound like a word, and we don't use it anymore. I think it is a word.
Yeah, it is. It is. And it's so disappointing because we all wanted to laugh at Donald. But
he knew it's a word. He knows.
Yeah, and then the other week there, we used the word friendlily, 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 as
That's
in
not a word, surely not.
Spoke to me in a friendlily way. And it turns out it is a word. It is a word. Friendlily is a word, and that's the context you would use it. So I would say, Gregor's got a really friendlily way about him as a host on his podcast.
Thanks.
I mean, it's ridiculous.
I wouldn't know what you mean, but that's weird.
It means exactly the same as friendly, but friendlily.
Yeah. That's a strange one. There was another one that Trump used. What was it? Covfefe. Remember he tweeted that? That's not a word.
No. Definitely not. Definitely not. I think, that man's quite something. That's another show for another day.
Yeah, definitely. Right, so the only thing I've got left to do is just a quick fire questions. Yeah, still okay for time?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I should mention these questions. These are from Tim Ferriss, who's an author. This is his questions, and some of them are from James Lipton from the Actors Studio. Those kind of fun questions. So
Love it.
Don't want to steal them. So best purchase of £100 or less.
Best purchase of £100 or less. That's a really good question. Actually, I'm going to go with my record player.
That's a good one. Okay. Most gifted book. So what book do you give away the most or recommend the most?
Tuesdays with Maury by Mitch Albom.
Okay. What's that about?
So Tuesdays with Maury is all. It's a true account of Mitch Albom, the author of an experience he had in life where he had left school, gone into the world of sports journalism. Life wasn't quite where he wanted it to be, and he found out that his old teacher Maury had taken very ill, and this is a teacher that he was particularly inspired by in school. And he got the opportunity to actually he felt compelled to go and visit him in hospital, having not seen him for 20 years or something like that. And he was so inspired by his conversation with Maury that they agreed that he could come and visit him again. And he started to visit him every Tuesday. And every Tuesday, Maury essentially taught him a life lesson. And that's all you need to know. And it's called Tuesdays with Maury. And it's probably the first kind of personal development book that I ever read. It made me cry, which I wasn't expecting. And is to this day still my favourite.
Wow. Okay. That'll be added to my list. So if you could have a big billboard with anything on it, anything written on it, what would you have?
I would have the phrase "Gie it laldy."
Brilliant. You'd have to have that in Scotland, otherwise people
absolutely,
would be
yeah,
very
you
confused.
can work anywhere else.
What advice would you give to your 20-year-old self? Yeah.
So much. So much. I think the key thing would be I think the key thing would be to it's maybe really obvious, but just something like worry less.
Yeah.
I would probably tell my 30-year-old self that, and my 10-year-old self that.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of advice I would give myself at 20, and there'd be certain things I'd be like, don't do that. Don't make that choice. And definitely do that, because that's going to be awesome. But just worry less, because it's plagued me for a long time. Has worrying.
Yeah. Favorite word?
Gallus.
Right. Least favorite word?
My least favorite word. Probably desk.
Good one. I like that.
Thanks.
Favorite curse word?
Shite.
What helps you best creatively?
Two things: running and my kids.
Right. What hinders you creatively?
My unbelievable ability to overthink things.
Right. Sound you love?
My kids laughing.
I could have guessed that. Least sound you hate the most?
The sound that I hate the most. So this is really random. When I'm on the phone to my mum, so I live in Edinburgh, my mum lives through in Troon, where I grew up, and my mum's one of these people that just can't sit still. So when I'm talking to the phone, I phone her every day because she's on her own, obviously because we lost Dad. But I phone her every day, and she does stuff when she's on the phone, and she goes in and out of the fridge a lot. I don't know why. I don't know what she's doing, but my mum's fridge, when it opens, does this, and when it closes, it also goes, right. So when I'm on the phone to my mum, and again, I don't know what she's doing, Gregor, but there's like 7, 8, 9 times on one short phone call where you just say, see that noise there? I hate it.
You sure it's not her?
Do you know? It could be her joints. I don't know. I'll tell her you said that.
What profession other than your own would you most want to do?
I think it would be an actor. I don't. People often say, "Have you got any regrets?" And actually, I do. There's all these people are like, "Oh no, I don't have any." You don't have time to regret things. I do have regrets. I think a lot of us have regrets. And one of mine is that I didn't go to drama school because I wanted to. I wanted to go to RSAMD in Glasgow, and I wanted to just become an actor and be in theatre and TV and movies and just perform. Now, I did have a huge number of years on stage with the comedy, but yeah, I would have gone to drama school.
And what profession would you least like to do?
I think, God, there's so many things I just don't think I would be able to do. Do you know, I don't know if this is controversial or not, but I don't want to be a nurse.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Like I respect and admire and love everything that they. I mean, again, that's been so highlighted through this pandemic. But I don't ever want to have to deal with what they deal with, and that might sound really selfish, but I just think I'd be dreadful at it.
There's only certain people that can have that mindset to do it, and that's why I respect them so much, because I just don't have. I don't have that mindset anymore.
Well, that's the thing. Like my wife Ali, like she was saying, if she was to have a change of career ever, she would be a midwife. And I'm like, oh, nah. And yet, when our kids were born, when our kids were born, midwives were the greatest humans I'd ever met in my life. But I couldn't do it.
Yeah. And to finish up, if God exists, what do you want him to say when you get to the pearly gates?
Would I want to know? No. No, I don't think so. Somebody asked me a similar thing not that long ago, actually, about would you want to know the day that you're going to die? And I'm like, I don't think so. What about you?
Yeah.
Would you want to know when that's going to happen?
Oh no. The question was, what do you want God to say?
Oh, sorry. So
When you said, I was like, okay, he doesn't want to answer the question. Fair enough.
no. Oh, sorry.
But no, I wouldn't want to know when I'm going to die. No.
Sorry, I thought you said, would you want God to say when you're going to get to the pearly gate?
Okay.
Not what would you want him to say when you get. So no, yeah. I've picked that wrong. Yeah, okay. I still don't want to know when I'm going to die though.
Sure.
What would I want him to say? Oh man, I would want him to say, "See through those gates, Gav. Your dad's there."
Yeah.
That would be. Yeah, that would be awesome to think that. Well, firstly, I don't believe in God, but at the same time, it would be amazing to find out that actually there is something, and that something can say to me, "Your old man's waiting for you through there." That'd be pretty special.
Yeah. And that's a lovely place to finish. So thank you so much for your time. The thing, I was very much looking forward to this one because first day I did, my plan was to do topics like this, like productivity and stuff like that, like not easy topics, but fun topics. And the problem is the news just blew up the past 2 months with all these stories, and I was like, I can't just ignore these stories. I'm going to have to do them. So it was episodes where I'm having to think really seriously and tiptoe and try and think what I'm trying to say. So this one was one I was really looking forward to. So thank you for your time.
Well, no, thank you for having me. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Brilliant.